We are farmers.
I started at GM in the summer of '57 as a summer student, summer intern, they called it. Made you feel like you were much more professional than you were. And then I came back as a full-time designer in '58. Yeah, that's right, in the fall of '58, because I had graduated, I'd done master's degree at Pratt Institute in Brooklyn. So let's see, the first time I went into a studio was went into a production studio. I went to Pontiac Studio as a junior designer in 1960, late 1960. I was in there for a couple of years, and then I went into advanced work, doing concept cars and things like that. Came back then in '67, in late '67, almost Christmas time, as the chief designer of Pontiac Studio. So I was chief designer of Pontiac then from '67 until '72, late '72. The body of the Firebird was shared with Chevrolet. They had developed a car called the Camaro, which was a response to Ford's Mustang. And Pontiac was, in a sense, lunching off of that, starting in 1967 with their Firebird. And the first Firebird then appeared with a Pontiac front-end sheet metal from Pontiac and so on, and Pontiac's grill and their look was done by my predecessor, and in many ways my mentor, a fellow named Jack Humbert. Jack was just a very gifted designer. I had great admiration for him. He had the touch. He was like a very fine tailor. He could take a fairly ordinary thing like a suit, and he, just by manipulating it a little less shoulder pad or a little more curve in the arm or whatever, he could make it into just, a Bond Street English masterpiece. Then the car that I was responsible for when I took Jack's place as Pontiac Studio Chief was the second generation car, all new sheet metal in 1970. In fact, it was a little late. It didn't come out till 70 and a half because of all the work that had to be done. Coordination with Chevrolet, trading parts back and forth, all that kind of stuff. It was a big deal to make an all-new car. On the other hand, I saw it as an opportunity to do something really fresh and new. But as I did so, I had to coordinate that with Chevrolet to be sure that if they shared that part, like the windshield, they wanted it the same way I did. So the Firebird had a more organic roof. If you look at the roof cross sections and the Trans Am, my Trans Am out front, the shapes are very, very organic, and especially when they come back into the body at the intersection of the rear side plane, which is called the sail panel, I don't know why, and the fender. There's a beautiful subtle reversal in the curves right there that takes place through there as those forms come back, rejoin. And I just love that area, and I love the fact that, it worked out that way for us. Well, the year I have is, my Firebird is a 1973. That's the last version of the second generation Firebird that I was lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time, and I actually was responsible for the design of the car. One of our studios, advanced studios, was called the Research Studio. It was sort of supposed to be the most advanced. And there's a fellow in there named Warren Fitzgerald, who was an older man, but an ex-teacher, although he died shortly after he invented this material called Endura, or the Pontiac called Endura. Essentially what he did, he conceived of this thin steel framework which would be, in a sense, kind of the outlines of the front end. This frame then was dipped and placed specifically in an exact position in this mold. And then this plastic material, which Pontiac called Endura, was injected into the mold all around it. This had been pioneered on the '68 GTO, an earlier car that I had done when I was in an advanced studio. I started it, and then it was finished, and Jack, my mentor, Jack Humbert, was running Pontiac Studio, and he finished it off up there. But I wanted this Endura material to be the front end of the Firebird. I felt like this Endura was our stuff. It was Pontiac. It belonged to, I was very territorial about it. You know, it was my stuff, and I wanted it on the Trans Am. There was a big problem, however. Well, there were two problems. One, it was expensive, and second, Mitchell, my boss, hated it. So I had a problem there because I wanted the Endura, and in a moment of, shall I say, clarity or transparency, I mentioned to DeLorean that I was going to try an Endura front on this car, and DeLorean loved the idea. He said, "Sure, that's our stuff, let's do it." John DeLorean was the vice president in charge of the whole motor division. So I did a front end with a chrome on it that Mitchell liked, had a chrome bumper, like a inverted mustache across the front and wrapping around the corners, and bright chrome. So I did one like that, and then I did the Endura one that I wanted on the master model, which was kind of a sneaky trick, but Mitchell, of course, knew right away what I was up to. The Endura front was there, and the what we called the bean counters, the finance guys, came in and looked at it and so on and said, "Hey, Porter, this damn thing, this Endura front's going to be up $33 over last year's front end." The $33 increase in price on that price car, by the time it gets to the customer, it's roughly tenfold. So it meant increasing it, $330 or $40, the price of the car to the customer, and you can't do that on that price car. Price came up on the front end, and John turned to me and he said, "What do you think, Bill?" And I said, "Well, I'm favoring the Endura front. I have all along." And so he turned to the bean counters and he said, "Guys, you're telling me this is up $33. We're going to have another meeting in 10 days. And you know what? You're going to tell me it's up $3. So I don't know what they did. I don't know if they cooked the books. I don't know what they did. But somehow or other, at the next meeting, it was up $3, and we got the Endura front. So anyway, John went to Mitchell and told Mitchell, he said, "Bill, I can't afford two separate front ends on this car, one chrome and one Endura, and I want the Endura for the Trans Am because that's our performance car, and it's like our GTO. It belongs to the same family. It's a high-performance car. I can't afford two front ends, so I want to go all Endura." Firebird Trans Am was going to be the top-of-the-line model of the Firebird, and Trans Am was the name of a race basically from South America to North America. I knew that Chevrolet was doing clandestine wind tunnel work on the Camaro, the sister car to my second generation Trans Am. I tried to make the Trans Am comparable and competitive with the Camaro. My friend who was with the Chevrolet Aero team came in, and he was all sad and head hanging down, and he said, "Bill, the worst thing happened that I can imagine." I said, "What on it? What is it? What's wrong?" And he said, "Chevrolet is not going to use their Aero work." He said that we can't use it. They're not going to use that data. And I thought for a little while, and I said, "Could you get me a copy of that report?" Within an hour or two, I had this 35-page book with every possible piece of data you'd want to know on the Aero for that car. It was absolutely wonderful. Anyway, so I started modeling all these aerodynamic parts. Bill Collins, who was the chief body engineer, his pal Herb, came up with the notion that they wanted a shaker hood which is where you cut a hole in the hood, let the scoop come up through the hole, but not connected to the hood. So when you give it acceleration and the engine shakes a little bit, the hood, you're sitting in the driver's seat, you can see this scoop shaking it. It was very dramatic, and it was a hot new thing. Ford had done it first, then Dodge had copied it. Plymouth with their Challenger, I think, had it. Anyway, so one day at lunch, I was thinking, how the hell can I integrate that thing visually into the lines of the car? So I thought, what if I took this new bird with the sort of the wings raised in victory with the feathers up and out, and I made it so big that it actually wrapped up around that stupid backward scoop. It might integrate it into the car a little more. It would look like it sort of belonged there. The ad guys went wild over it. Oh, we can really do great ads with using this giant bird. It was about, almost 4 feet across by then. The time had come for us to design new wheels to go with this new second generation car. And I was inspired by Buckminster Fuller's Dymaxion domes. Those were the domes that were made of a triangulated geometry. The idea was, with this sort of honeycomb pattern, they became known as honeycomb wheels. But it could still be very lightweight because I'd eliminated all those air volumes in there were air. They weren't solid aluminum or solid steel or some other material. One of the engineers, a fellow who was running the wheel program at Pontiac, had in the meantime been talking with one of the plastics companies that was trying to get into the wheel business, for Pontiac, and they came up with this idea of just doing a standard steel wheel and then molding my design on top of it in plastic. Which, the minute I heard about it, I just, oh no, you guys! Here I had this inspired design, this perfect geometry, and you're going to screw it up. You're going to run it. Well, this engineer had already made his deal, whatever it was, with the plastic company, so there was no getting out of it. And he showed it to John, and of course the wheel looked beautiful. It looked pretty much like my standard design, so that's what they went with. And I was so upset. I remember at the time that this all happened, there was a popular song, and you may have heard it. It was, "Look What They've Done to My Song, Ma. Look what they've done to my song, Ma. Look what they've done to my song." And then they go into a long thing about how I got ruined. They changed this to that, and they changed that to that. Ruined the song. Well, they've ruined my wheel. And to this day, I'm still so angry at that guy. Every time I think of his name, that wheel engineer, I could just punch him right in the nose. I think that the Firebird, it made it through with most of its original good design ideas intact. It didn't have, it survived the static, if you will, all the static input. And I was really proud of that. Later on, when I was with Buick, I had my 95 Riviera pretty much got through the system with the static under control. And of course, I have one in the garage. I have a place in my heart for these cars that make it through the system without getting ruined. A lot of them get ruined, a lot of them. And when one gets through, it's really a great thing.